Thank you for making time for this discussion. So we all know that inclusion and diversity is important. And especially in the COVID era, we find a lot of organizations accelerating their diversity agenda, and they're doing a great job. But in certain sectors, some of the traditional sectors like real estate or even manufacturing, automobiles, there's still some concern when it comes to diversity, and the companies are finding it a challenge to attract more women into their workforce. So let's see what our panelists have to say. So Karan, I would like to start with you. So how important is diversity in the core sector?
I think diversity is very, very important. It's the right thing to do. What we did, and I know, when you sit in boardrooms, numbers are very important because companies are listed, financials are important. So let me give an example. So we did a study across the business, and we realized that teams which are diverse have 18% better performance on engagement and profit. So if that's not a strong enough reason to drive this agenda, then what else, right? Because mostly the reasons and excuses we always hear from people are financial in nature. But this is something that comes across very, very clearly from a study point of view.
So for you and Sodexo, I remember you telling me when I visited you at your office a couple of weeks ago that diversity is not necessarily gender. You kind of have extended it to senior citizens. You have a lot of people from the LGBTQ community.
Correct.
So, how does that kind of really impact growth? How does it, help improve productivity in general?
See, globally, it's a very important topic for us. So it starts right from the top, right from the chairwoman of the company. Right? So it starts from there. And we believe diversity is the right thing to do from an organization point of view. We've seen a lot of cases, we talk about core sector, right? We see when I go and see clients, it's 95%, 100% male population. You sit in meetings and there are only men in meetings. And the common reasons we always hear is, we don't have the right talent, or, women are not flexible, and multiple reasons. But there are organizations like Sodexo which have shown and proved that if you have the right intent, there is talent available. There is the right agenda to be driven as an organization. We also a lot of times push our clients to go on that journey. We want to lead by example, which is why we actually hired transgender at our client locations, where clients didn't think it was possible. So once we did that, we realized that clients started to believe that, it's possible, it's a talent that's available in the market. There are organizations that actually, facilitate the growth of these individuals. So if you believe in it, you have to do it, and you have to lead by example. And we've clearly seen that even the behavior of people around changes. All men team don't behave well, by the way, But when you put a lady in the room, when you put a transgender in the room, let me tell you the kind of conversations that people have, people are much more polite, people are much more empathetic, the language changes, And these are the softer aspects of it, People may not say it overtly, but you clearly see that when there are women in the room, when there are transgenders, when there are LGBTQs in the room, the amount of empathy in the room and the kind of quality of conversations that happen, they automatically go up, whether you like it or not.
So Rohin, coming to you. In fact, Rohin has a weird kind of dilemma. He heads an all-women team. So, in fact, he was asked, recently as to where's the diversity, because there are only women. So it'll be interesting to hear from you as to, all women. What kind of a difference do they make? And also, how are you looking at bringing in diversity?
Hi. So I have an all-women team, which is interesting. It wasn't always all women. In the last 2 years, it has become all women. It's interesting, and I'll just throw out a couple of thoughts for us to go on. Women leaders don't like to be called women leaders. They just like to be called leaders. And I think that's a very important point to keep in mind. Number two, the hardest working people I know, one was my ex-boss, who was a woman. And there are people in my team who are smarter and harder working than me, and I think most people I know. So this entire thing around women, can they work hard or not? I'm just putting it out there. Number three, I'm not an I&D expert. I head capability development. So from a skilling perspective, when we look at the skilling landscape, we don't distinguish between men and women. But I can tell you this, that when women in their roles are not the primary caregivers, I have seen that the amount of drive and energy they have towards what are considered classic socio-economic indicators of success, which are typically considered male bastion, they go after exactly the same things, which is, promotions and money and everything else which we say is challenging, right? Networking. No, if they are not the primary caregivers, I have seen that they go after exactly the same thing and very successfully. So I think those have been very interesting learnings. I don't have a view of the conversations become more sensitive. I am on these all-women team calls, and typically I am the only guy, so I don't think I have had the benefit of that. The conversations flow the way they do. But I have seen this, that you have to become, I have had to flex my leadership style slightly over the last 2 years. I've seen that there is a desire to have a more, I'm not a very relationship-oriented boss, I have been told, and in feedback, but I've had to work on that over the last at least 2 years, where now I'm a lot more aware of what's happening in people's lives, and I've been given feedback that that's something which is considered a good thing. So today I was asking one of my second in lines that, why did you stick around? Okay, I have to go on to this panel. And she said that, you're an amazing boss. So I'm just ending with that right now. Everyone, I'm an amazing boss. At least that's what the general consensus is. So I'm just going to stop there.
Thank you. Mahika, you're in a sector which is male-dominated. People generally, the perception is that a woman is not meant to work in the real estate sector. And I was just talking to the joint managing director of Brigade Group the other day, and she was telling me that, on the contrary, some of the best negotiations are done by her women employees. So how difficult is it for you to kind of attract women in the middle level and senior level in the organization?
Thank you. So yes, you're right. I mean, real estate is amongst the largest contributors to the GDP. So we, as a sector, we have greater responsibility to be inclusive. And that's very, very important to us and for us. We are very conscious of that at Lodha. I think even when you look at it from the business perspective, we are dealing with consumers who are diverse, right? And to get a better understanding of those consumers, it is important for us to have a diverse workforce. And I think the barriers that exist are similar to those of other sectors, which would be like manufacturing or anything else, where I think the biggest barriers for women are the social and the cultural barriers that exist in society. It's definitely not skills. We know that for example, like the gross enrollment ratio in higher education for men and women is equal in our country. So we're typically, we're equally employable. But women still drop out of the workforce when they get married or they have children. And there's much more to this than just skills gap. And I think the answer lies in sort of unlocking the social and cultural barriers.
So what really can be done, Karan, to kind of, actually attract more women into the workforce, if not just women, but across, it could be, other gender, or it could be, people from different cultures. What really needs to be done to, from a policy level, from a strategy level? We all know that companies are kind of doing their best, but is there anything that extra mile that one needs to go to kind of really bring in that diversity?
I think the first thing we need to do is, change the mindset of leaders we have in the organization. I think it starts from there. And usually we hear examples or reasons that, women don't work late, their safety is an issue, leaves and stuff like that, right? But if the approach, I'll give you an example. We work with a very large client, of ours. They opened a huge manufacturing plant, which is about 12,000 people, 2 hours outside of Bangalore, right? So it's a remote location. It's not in the middle of the city. They have a 70% diversity rate. 70% of the people working in manufacturing plant, which is considered, oh, girls can't work there, are women. So obviously when we partnered with them, that gave us enough motivation. And today, at a country level, I work at a 20% diversity. But at that particular location, I have a 50% diversity rate. And this is not in the middle of the city. Usually, you'd say that it's the middle of the city, it's more accessible. But what did we do? We clearly hired people, from states who needed employment. We gave them accommodation, we gave them food, we placed them closer to where the interest was, and we gave them the right safety, security, principles in place. And it's possible. It's not that it's not possible. The point is, did you want to do it? If you want to do it, you can do it. We generally what we do is, and to Rohin's point, right? The issue we see is if for primary caregivers, that's where the challenge is, right? Because that's where they have to take care of their families, they have to go back home. So, to expect a primary caregiver to travel 2 hours, and then she has to go home, cook food, take care of the child, that becomes very, very challenging. So what we started to do was we started to offer part-time employment, for some of these, females. We said, why don't you come work for us for 4 hours, 5 hours, you pick the window you want to work in, and we will give you a role of your choice, which suits your capability. The point is, do you want it enough or not? If you don't want females to work in your organization, there are enough and more excuses why it does not work. But if you really want to make it happen, flexi hours is a classic example. As an organization, COVID taught us flexi hours. The general common excuse is manufacturing cannot go flexi hours. Why not? Because most manufacturing plants work at least 16 hours, if not 24. Then the other reasons you always hear is women can't work night shifts. So we need to then, manage the male who are working in rotation. I have seen females, I have seen organizations which have had women working in night shifts. What is the biggest worry women have? Safety and security. If you are able to provide that to them, why would women not want to work in night shifts? So, it's more the mental barrier that has to be taken off.
Yeah, it's more the block that women don't want
absolutely.
to work. Okay. Coming back to you, Mahika, you have a lot of blue-collared employees in your workforce. So what are you doing for them?
So yeah, I mean, I'll talk from what we're doing as an organization and also, beyond what it is that we're doing. I'll just tell you this quick anecdote of this one woman. Her name is Vandana, and she lives at one of our developments, Palava, and she's a graduate. She was working with working with a large bank as a data entry officer. It's an entry-level job. She was earning like 17,000 rupees, and when she got married and she had children, she left her job because the job was 2 hours away. She had her household responsibilities to manage. She was the primary caregiver, and what we realized through her story is that this is not a unique story. This is the story of almost every woman in India. And most working women are also doing 2 full-time jobs. They are managing the household and they're doing their day job. And it's almost like we're setting up women for something extraordinary, almost to fail, right? And I think that's the thing that needs to change. And we, through this program Unnati, we're trying to develop a platform where work goes to women rather than women going to work. And we really believe that our economy and the way we work needs to be redesigned, especially for Indian women, given that these cultural barriers exist. And we are developing workspaces near residential hubs, where we expect the employers to have a preference to hire more women, and we're giving those spaces at a very heavy discount, at 75% discount to any employer who can absorb this workforce. And along with the space we are helping women skill themselves or you know, just kind of match the skill gap, because mostly they've been out of work for you know 5 to 7 years, and that really has an effect on your confidence. So so skill, and then also support them in childcare, because you know it's a real thing. It's seen as a woman's responsibility in our country. So so having the support infrastructure for all of that is the other thing that we are doing. We are seeing, even in our own business, construction, like a lot more women joining in. It's not necessarily seen as something safe and by families. So you know that is something that that kind of will change with time because of all the safety precautions we take. But yeah, this is definitely something.
What's the diversity rate in your organization?
So construction, we still have, I mean, and the diversity is pretty low over there. Like I said, because of the cultural factors, we still have quite a few women, but in the management, most departments have equal men and women in like senior management, middle level management, and a lot of teams have more women as well. So yeah.
So coming to skilling, now that we're talking about skilling, Rohin, I would like to hear from you. So we are living in an era of automation where artificial intelligence, IoT, you know, all that is the order of the day. And we hear of acute skill shortage. Companies are struggling to get, you know, good talent. So in an environment like that, how would diversity help? And also, how would, you know, would STEM education, would companies investing in STEM education be a solution?
Hey, so before I start off, I just want to put this out there. I've seen a lot of people talk about that, you know, women have a natural tendency towards multitasking or some other skill. I don't like that idea, because see, what happens is it pigeonholes the genders. That, you know, women are good at this and they're not good at this. Men are good at this and men are not good at this. I would say, just put that aside for as a primary thought. The second piece is you're absolutely right. There is an acute skill shortage across India. We are constantly looking for new ways to leverage the talent pool which might have been ignored. So women, especially there, the ones who have, let's say, you got married, you took a break, or you had a child and then you were a primary caregiver, so you took a break, or you're taking care of someone else. So the good thing is that we have become, over the last few years, incredibly hybrid as an organization. So our ability to offer roles which are flexible or even remote for that matter has dramatically improved. And that has allowed us to tap a significantly larger pool of smart talent everywhere. So that's one part of it. The other part of this is, you spoke about STEM and investment in STEM. Yeah, the literature is clear that STEM has been considered classical male domain. A lot of inclusion and diversity leads organizations talk about investing more in STEM. I think that's a great idea. But I'm also going to quote this 2019 study, which is on the internet, and you can all look at it. It talks about in the Nordic countries, which are the most egalitarian in terms of their social construct, where the assumption is that people are not picking up education or jobs as per the gender norms or gender expectations. There is not a lot of cross-pollination happening between what are considered classically male roles, male sectors, and classically female sectors. So they are still seeing high disposition of women going into what, like for example, healthcare or education, not as much into manufacturing or engineering for that matter. So that's a very interesting question, that if you look at an egalitarian society where apparently a lot of this work has been done, why is that still the pattern? And that throws up interesting question that what are the choices people are making? For example, are gender still viewing certain roles as very male-oriented or female-oriented and hence not making the move? So that's what I would put out.
So what kind of conversations, I mean, that is from a KPMG perspective, but what kind of conversations are you having with, with the companies you consult?
Okay, so there is definitely conversations with the companies we consult about when we look at diversity, about how they are doing on diversity indicators. A lot of them. We have got, and it's a part of a larger global agenda to make sure that we are driving a more inclusive workforce across the globe, and we are also doing that for our clients. Because, as you said at the start, the research is very clear that diversity does lead to better financial results. But the question is that hiring diverse talent is not enough. Do you give them a space on the table? Like the research on high-performing teams actually indicates that it is psychological safety, which is an opportunity to offer a point of view without fear of repercussions, and equal airtime, which actually is an indicator of a high-performing team. So imagine that you hired two women, and it's as you said, it's a room full of men, and they get crowded out. The psychological phenomena is called crowding. You don't give as much time. Women don't get as much airtime. Then diversity is failing. It's not working the way it's supposed to. So one is to actually work at a strategy level and say, listen, what's your diversity agenda? What are your diversity goals? But the other piece is to actually look at it at a culture conversation level. How are you making that happen? And then ensuring that you are actually being flexible. Like, for example, in my team, I have a 21-year-old who's finished college, and she is a mountaineer, and we are helping her do her postgrad with us. I also have someone who is essentially telling me that, Rohin, I want to be your successor in the next few years. Then I also have someone who's a recent mother, and she wants to right now take a lot more flexible, explore flexible working options. You need to be able to cater to all of them in a very transparent, consistent fashion. That's what it would take.
Karan, how important is it for organizations to invest in STEM in order to attract a more diverse talent?
Ajita, what we're doing is more than STEM, we are focusing on NAPS, which is the apprentice. So we actually believe that if you take on more apprentices, you are able to give them the right training, right development, and then they have a career option to go into different roles. Because because NAPS is nothing but at the start of that career, right? So we're taking people and we give them access to jobs they would probably never thought existed. Because we're looking at a start of people that don't know what career they want to get into. All they're looking for is to make a living, to get a job. So our focus in the organization is to have more NAPS, and focus on that, because that is where you can actually make a difference. So we currently have about 1,000 NAPS, already, and the intention is that as an organization with 50,000 people, 10% of our workforce should be apprentices who then eventually after 6 to 9 months move into regular roles. So that's the whole thought process we have. More than STEM, we're focusing on the NAPS piece.
In what kind of roles do you bring them in, and at what levels of education are they? And how does it work in the sense?
We bring them in at all roles, right? So as an organization, we help organizations focus on their non-core. So if you are a manufacturing organization, you focus on, let's say, making a car. But I will help manage all the peripheral services. As an organization, I have more than 200 job roles that I cater to. So that is the amount of option that a person has. So and we look at people who are who finished school but could not study further because they could not afford to go to college, or people who are school dropouts because their financial situation wasn't such. So we're looking at that strata of people, and we're trying to give them employment. As a part of the NAP scheme also, we help people finish education. So if their intention is also to finish education, we support them with that. We help them graduate so that their career progression is much faster as compared to what it would have been had they not been graduate. So we're looking at different roles across, not only in white collar, but also in blue collar.
So these are typically students who are finished their 12th, they join in as apprentices?
Yes,
or after
students finished their 10th, finished their 12th, dropouts, couldn't finish studies, whole range.
Mahika, how are you skilling both your white collar as well as blue collar women employees? What are you doing differently?
I think for us, we see skilling as only one part of the problem. We really want to focus on what happens after the skilling. Our women, I'm talking specifically about women because our work focuses a lot on women, but in general, this holds true for all different cohorts. That you know, is the productivity greater? And in fact, one of the leading banks, and we have that as a case study as part of our program, developed an all-women data entry office, and they saw that the attrition rate fell down to single digits, and work productivity also increased significantly, and that's measured in terms of the error in the data entry. So you know, the focus is much more like post-skilling. What is it that is making women leave work or stay in work, and how is it that we can make a more enabling environment, and not just by ourselves, but having other organizations help us through this journey.
So there's a lot of conversations around gig. So how, coming to you, I mean, I would come back to you, Karan. So how would gig employees help? Would again that help in increasing diversity? How does that help? Does it kind of?
Yeah, I think gig is a nice fancy word. You know, I call it part time. You know, so we always had part time work earlier as well. So for us, we look more part time than gig. You know, because like we mentioned earlier, for primary caregivers, there is a window in which they can work, you know, and there is a window in which they got to take care of their families, their children, and stuff. So if you offer part-time opportunities and employment, you know, especially to women, you know, where you're flexible around the hours that they can come and work, we can see diversity go up quite high. You know. We've seen that in hybrid working, especially, you know, in IT and consulting space. We've seen a lot of people, you know, as long as they finish their hours, it's all right what time they start, what time they finish, you manage your calls. You know, COVID taught us that you work 12, 14 hours a day, but, you know, you work only 6 hours. Pretty much you manage your calls, then you do your own thing at home, then you go back to your calls, finish your work. So COVID actually taught people a lot of things. From our point of view, we look more from a part-time point of view. We can call it gig. Gig can be part-time. But that's where if you offer employment opportunities as part-time or as gig, like we call it, you can definitely see diversity go. We've seen that in a few of our roles where, you know, we were able to hire a lot of women, giving that opportunity to them.
Again, coming back to you, Rohin, what do you think of gig? How would that help in increasing diversity in workforce?
Absolutely. See, as a concept, gig works really well because people who need flexibility have the option of flexibility. But I would be very careful about gig impacting diversity at a culture level, because that depends upon how the gig piece is integrated into the overall workflow. If they are, for example, if they're working as like third-party contractors, then it might not impact the culture of the organization as much, because they're working at a very tactical level that, you know, you're given a task, you're doing it, you're getting it done, and that's it. For it to impact the culture of the organization, the integration or how they're engaging with the overall work ecosystem, that has to be looked at. If the person is sitting at home and you never met them and all they are is an email ID and work calls where the person is given work and they just finish it off and that's it, then the chances of them impacting the organization are lower. The impact will happen when, from a diversity perspective, they move into mainstream roles, they rise into the leadership pyramid. That is where actual institutionalized impact is going to happen. But yeah, I think better gig than nothing, because flexibility definitely is a game changer when it comes to building diversity, irrespective of gender also.
Interesting. So it would be nice to get your parting thoughts. You know, what is the biggest, Mahika, we can start with you. What is the biggest mindset change that is needed by organizations in order to, you know, build a more diverse workforce? What is the biggest mindset change?
I think for organizations, the biggest mindset change is allow for diversity in the truest sense, to accommodate it in whatever ways and forms that it comes in. And I think it'll take time because organizations have structures and processes and all of that. But I think it's very, very important for organizations to really account for it. You know, we talk about COVID and you know, it teaching us about flexibility with the maximum workforce participation, female workforce participation drop rate happened during COVID because you know, that flexibility did not translate well for women. So I think we really need to think of it deeply and understand and sort of design systems to work around people rather than people working for a system.
Thank you. Rohin, what are your parting thoughts? What is the biggest mindset change that is required?
Okay, so I'm not a huge proponent of people doing anything for the collective altruistic good. I think no one does anything because it's a good thing to do. If organizations are very clear that it makes business sense, which it does, and remember that, processes and systems can be realigned and redesigned, and I've seen it happen. So that's it. As long as you're very clear that it makes business sense, you're going to make it happen.
Karan, your parting thoughts.
I think more than focusing on diversity as a subject, we should talk about equal employment opportunity. You know, so as leaders, if there are open positions in your organization, you know, we should definitely mandate that if a person's getting hired, how many profiles were presented which were men and which were women. I think the bigger problem is that it starts there. So if you need to really make a difference, it has to start with equal opportunity. I think that's where we all fail. You know, and that's where the change will happen. If we as leaders, business heads, mandate that there has to be equal opportunity, if you're hiring one role, how many CVs did you interview? You know, how many male CVs, how many female CVs? If you start there, I think your job is half done. I think that's where the problem is. I think that's where the mindset change needs to happen.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you so much.